Iris's hands trembled as she held the wedding ring that wasn't hers. It was buried beneath 40 years of dust in her grandmother's attic, tucked inside a shoebox marked Margaret, 1952. But Iris's grandmother was named Eleanor, and Eleanor had never been married to anyone named Robert, according to the inscription carved inside the band. To my dearest Margaret, forever yours, Robert. Iris had come to clean out the house after Eleanor's funeral 3 days ago. She expected old photographs and moth-eaten clothes. She didn't expect to discover that her grandmother might have been living under a different name her entire life. Before we dive in, where in the world are you watching from right now? Type your country or city in the comments. I love seeing how far these stories travel. And if you enjoy emotional stories like this, please hit subscribe. All right, back to the story. Iris sank down onto the dusty floorboards, the ring catching the afternoon light streaming through the small attic window. Beside the ring, she found a stack of letters tied with a faded blue ribbon. The return address made her heart skip. Robert Mitchell, 1423, Maple Street, Cedar Falls. Cedar Falls. That was only 2 hours away. The first letter was dated September 15th, 1952. Iris's hands shook as she unfolded the yellowed paper. My darling Margaret, I waited at the train station until midnight. I know something must have happened. Please write to me. I can't lose you, not when we were so close to having everything we dreamed of. The cottage by the lake is still waiting for us. Our life is still waiting for us. Iris's breath caught. Her grandmother Eleanor had always lived alone, never married, never even dated, as far as Iris knew. Eleanor used to say love was too complicated, too messy. She preferred her books and her garden and her quiet life. But these letters, they painted a picture of a woman deeply, desperately in love. Iris flipped through the stack. 27 letters, all from Robert. All addressed to Margaret. The last one was dated December 3rd, 1952. Margaret, I don't understand your silence. If you've changed your mind about us, please tell me. I'll respect your decision, but I need to know. I've taken a job in California. I leave next week. This is my final letter. I'll love you until my last breath, whether you want that love or not. Iris's eyes filled with tears. 60 years ago, someone had loved her grandmother with a fierce, beautiful intensity. And Eleanor or Margaret had never responded. But why? Iris looked around the attic with new eyes. What other secrets was this house hiding? She noticed a trunk in the corner she hadn't opened yet. Inside, she found a wedding dress, still in its box. Never worn. The tag showed a purchase date of October 1952. 1 month after Robert's first letter. Iris's mind raced. Her grandmother had bought a wedding dress. She'd been planning to marry Robert. So what happened? Why didn't Margaret get on that train? And more importantly, why did she become Eleanor? Iris heard a car door slam outside. Through the attic window, she saw a man walking up the front path. He looked to be in his 70s, with silver hair and gentle eyes. He carried a bouquet of white roses. Iris climbed down from the attic, still holding the ring and letters. She opened the front door before the man could knock. I'm sorry, he said softly. I saw the estate sale sign. I was hoping. I knew Eleanor lived here. I come by sometimes, just to. His voice trailed off as his eyes fell on the letters in Iris's hand. His face went completely white. Those are my letters, he whispered. I wrote those to Margaret 60 years ago. Iris's heart stopped. You're Robert. He nodded, his eyes never leaving the letters. And you must be Iris. Eleanor showed me your picture once, through the window. I've been watching over her for 40 years, you know, making sure she was safe. I never stopped loving her, even after. He paused. Wait, you called her Eleanor. But her real name was Margaret. That's what I'm trying to figure out, Iris said gently. Would you like to come in? I think we both have questions that need answering. Robert stepped into the house he'd been watching from afar for 4 decades. His eyes filled with tears as he looked around at Eleanor's simple, quiet life. She was so close, he murmured. All these years, she was so close, and I never knew if she remembered me, if she ever thought about what we could have been. Iris handed him the wedding ring. Robert's legs nearly gave out. She kept it, he breathed. After all this time, she kept our ring. Robert, Iris said carefully, I need to ask you something. What happened in 1952? Why didn't Margaret get on that train? Robert closed his eyes, and when he opened them, Iris saw decades of pain and confusion. That's what I've been wondering for 60 years, he said. She was supposed to meet me at 8 p.m. on September 15th. We were going to elope. She said her family would never approve of me. I was just a factory worker, and she came from money. But she said she didn't care. She said love was worth more than their approval. He sank into Eleanor's favorite armchair. I waited until midnight. Then I went to her family's house. They said Margaret had left town suddenly. A family emergency. They wouldn't tell me where she'd gone or when she'd be back. That's when I started writing the letters. But she never responded, Iris said softly. Never. Not once. I thought maybe she'd changed her mind. Maybe her family convinced her I wasn't good enough. So I stopped writing and took that job in California. I thought I'd never see her again. Robert's voice broke. But I couldn't stay away. I came back to Cedar Falls 20 years later. I heard through old friends that a woman named Eleanor had moved into this house. I never connected the two until. He gestured at the letters. How long have you known? Iris asked. I saw her at the grocery store 15 years ago. I knew immediately. Those eyes. I'd know those eyes anywhere. But she looked right through me. Like I was a stranger. I thought maybe I was wrong. Maybe it wasn't her. But my heart knew. Iris felt tears running down her cheeks. So you've been watching over her all this time? Even though you thought she didn't want you? I couldn't help myself. I'd drive by sometimes, just to see if she was okay. I'd leave flowers on her doorstep on her birthday. I'd make sure her walkway was shoveled in winter. I told myself I was just being neighborly, but you were still in love with her. Robert nodded, wiping his eyes. Completely. Hopelessly. Even after all these years. Iris sat down across from him, still holding the bundle of letters. Something didn't add up. If Eleanor had seen Robert at the grocery store, why didn't she acknowledge him? Why did she keep his ring and letters, but pretend not to know him? Robert, she said slowly, what if Margaret never got your letters? What if she never knew you were looking for her? But I sent them to her family's house. What if her family intercepted them? What if they never told her you were trying to reach her? Robert's face went pale. You think. I think my grandmother spent 60 years believing you forgot about her. And you spent 60 years believing she didn't want you. But what if you were both wrong? The room fell silent except for the ticking of Eleanor's old clock. There's only one way to find out, Iris said finally. We need to find out what really happened in 1952. We need to talk to someone who was there. Robert leaned forward. Margaret's sister, Catherine. She might still be alive. She'd be in her 80s now, but do you know where she lives? Last I heard, she was in a nursing home in Magnolia Springs. Sunset Manor. Iris stood up, decision made. Then that's where we're going. Right now. Iris, wait. What if we find out something that makes everything worse? What if? What if we find out the truth? Iris interrupted. What if we find out that two people spent their whole lives apart because of a lie? Don't you think they deserve to know? Robert looked at the wedding ring in his palm. She's gone now. It's too late. Maybe it's too late for Eleanor and Margaret, Iris said gently. But it's not too late for you to understand what happened. It's not too late for you to know that she loved you. Robert stood up slowly, his decision made. Let's go find Catherine. The drive to Millbrook felt like the longest hour of Robert's life. He sat in the passenger seat of Iris's car, still clutching the wedding ring, while she navigated the winding country roads. Neither of them spoke much. The weight of 60 years of questions hung between them like fog. Sunset Manor was a sprawling brick building surrounded by oak trees. As they walked through the automatic doors, the smell of disinfectant and floor wax hit them immediately. A young nurse at the front desk looked up with a practiced smile. "We're looking for Catherine Whitmore," Iris said. She would be in her 80s. The nurse's smile faltered slightly. "Are you family?" "I'm her great-niece," Iris lied smoothly. "This is my grandfather. We're here about her sister Margaret." The nurse's expression softened. "Oh, you must mean Katie. She's in room 237. But I should warn you, she has good days and bad days. Today." She paused. "Today, she's been asking for Margaret all morning. She seems to think her sister is coming to visit." Robert and Iris exchanged glances. "She's been asking for Margaret?" Robert asked. "She does sometimes. It's heartbreaking, really. She gets so agitated when we tell her Margaret isn't coming. We've learned it's better to just redirect her attention." They found room 237 at the end of a long hallway. Through the partially open door, they could see an elderly woman sitting by the window, her white hair carefully brushed and pinned back. She was wearing a pale blue dress and staring out at the garden. Iris knocked gently. "Catherine? Katie?" The woman turned, and Iris saw Eleanor's eyes staring back at her. The family resemblance was unmistakable. "Margaret." Catherine's voice was hopeful, confused. "Is that you? You look different." "No, Katie. I'm Iris. I'm Margaret's granddaughter." Catherine's face fell. "Oh, I thought. I've been waiting for her. She said she'd come back." Robert stepped forward, his heart hammering. "Catherine, my name is Robert. Robert Mitchell. I was friends with your sister." Catherine's eyes widened. She stared at him for a long moment, and then her face crumpled. "Robert," she whispered. "Oh, Robert. I'm so sorry." "I'm so sorry." "Katie, what are you sorry for?" Catherine began to cry. "I never told her. I never told Margaret you were looking for her. Father made me promise. He said it was for her own good." The room went silent except for Catherine's quiet sobs. "What do you mean?" Robert asked, his voice barely audible. "The letters. All those letters you sent. Father burned them. He burned every single one. Margaret never saw them." Iris felt the floor shifting beneath her feet. "Why? Why would he do that?" Catherine wiped her eyes with a shaky hand. "Because of the baby. Margaret was pregnant, Robert. She was carrying your child." Robert's legs gave out. He collapsed into the chair beside Catherine's bed, his face white as paper. "Pregnant?" he whispered. "She was going to tell you that night. September 15th. She was going to meet you at the train station and tell you about the baby, and then you were going to run away together and get married. But she never came, because Father found out. He found the train ticket in her room. He found the wedding dress. He put it all together and..." Catherine's voice broke. "He locked her in her room. He told her if she tried to leave, he'd have you arrested. He said he'd ruin your life and make sure you never worked again." What would you have done in her situation? A young woman, pregnant and terrified, with her family threatening the man she loved? "So she stayed," Iris said softly. "She stayed, and Father sent her away the next morning. To our aunt's house in Vermont. He told everyone she was sick, that she needed rest. But really, he was hiding her until the baby was born." Robert's hands were shaking. "The baby? What happened to the baby?" Catherine closed her eyes. "She had a little girl. Beautiful, with dark hair just like yours. But the birth, something went wrong. The baby lived for 3 days." The room fell silent. Robert put his head in his hands. Margaret was heartbroken. She blamed herself. She said if she'd been braver, if she'd defied Father and run away with you, maybe the baby would have lived. Maybe you could have been a real family. She named the baby Rose, Catherine continued. "After the roses you used to bring her. She's buried in the cemetery in Millbrook. Margaret used to visit every year on her birthday." Iris felt tears streaming down her face. That's why she became Eleanor. She couldn't bear to be Margaret anymore. When she came back from Vermont, she was different. Broken. She told father she'd do whatever he wanted, but she wouldn't be his daughter anymore. She legally changed her name to Eleanor and moved away. She said Margaret died with baby Rose. Robert finally looked up. All these years, I thought she didn't want me. I thought she chose her family's money over our love. She never stopped loving you, Catherine said firmly. She kept every photo, every gift you ever gave her. When father died, I tried to tell her you'd been looking for her. I tried to give her your letters, but she wouldn't listen. She said it was too late. She said she'd hurt you enough. I saw her, Robert said quietly. 15 years ago. At the grocery store. She looked right at me. She saw you too. She came to visit me the next day. She was shaking. She said seeing you made her remember what it felt like to be alive. But she was scared. She said too much time had passed. She said you probably had a family, a life. She didn't want to disrupt that. Robert laughed bitterly. A life? I never married, Catherine. I never had children. I spent 60 years waiting for a woman who thought I'd forgotten her. She never forgot you either. Even as Eleanor, she never forgot Robert Mitchell. Catherine reached for Iris's hand. She talked about you all the time, dear. She said you were the only good thing that came from all the pain. She said you reminded her of what love could look like. Iris squeezed Catherine's hand. She never told me about any of this. She was protecting you. She thought if she told you about Robert, about the baby, about all the choices she'd made, it would make you sad. She wanted you to believe in love, even if she couldn't have it herself. Robert stood up slowly. I need to see the grave. Baby Rose's grave. Catherine nodded. It's in Millbrook Cemetery. Section C, near the big oak tree. There's a small headstone. Rose Mitchell, it says. Margaret had it changed after father died. She wanted the baby to have your name. Robert's voice broke completely. She gave our daughter my name. She never stopped being your wife in her heart, Robert. The wedding ring you gave her? She wore it on a chain around her neck every day for 60 years. She's buried with it. Iris felt a chill run through her. Wait, she's buried with the ring? But I found it in the attic. Catherine frowned. That's impossible. I saw it at the funeral home. The director asked if we wanted to remove it, but I said no. Margaret would have wanted to keep it with her. Then whose ring is this? Iris pulled the ring from her pocket. Catherine's eyes widened. That's Robert's ring. The one Margaret bought for him. She was going to give it to you on your wedding day, Robert. She said every man should have something to remember his promises by. Robert stared at the ring in amazement. She bought me a ring? She bought a lot of things for your life together. There's a hope chest in her bedroom closet. She's been filling it for 60 years with things she imagined giving you. Shirts she thought you'd like. Books she wanted to share with you. Photo albums of the life she dreamed you'd have together. Iris's heart ached. She spent 60 years preparing for a life she thought she'd never have. She never gave up hope, Catherine said softly. Not completely. She said someday, in another life, she'd find you again. She'd be brave enough to tell you the truth. Robert wiped his eyes. I have to see everything. The hope chest, the grave, all of it. I need to understand what she was thinking all these years. There's something else, Catherine said hesitantly. Something I never told anyone. Margaret left a letter. She wrote it last year when she found out she was sick. She gave it to me and made me promise to give it to you if you ever came looking for her. You have a letter from her? Catherine nodded and pointed to her bedside table. Top drawer. The blue envelope. Iris opened the drawer with trembling hands. Inside was a letter addressed simply to my dearest Robert. She knew I'd come, Robert whispered. She hoped you would. She said if you ever found out the truth, you'd come looking for answers. She wanted you to have them. Robert held the letter but didn't open it. I don't know if I'm ready. You've been ready for 60 years, Iris said gently. "Read it." With shaking hands, Robert opened the envelope. The letter was written in the same careful handwriting he remembered from 60 years ago. "My dearest Robert, if you're reading this, it means the truth has finally found its way to you. I pray you can forgive me for all the years I let you think I didn't love you. I have loved you every day since September 15th, 1952. I have loved you through every sunrise and every storm. I have loved you in my dreams and in my waking hours. I have loved you as Margaret and as Eleanor, because love doesn't die just because we change our names. I know you must be angry. I know you must feel betrayed. But please know that every choice I made was to protect you. My father threatened to destroy your life if I ran away with you. I couldn't bear the thought of you suffering because of me. I want you to know about Rose, our daughter. She was beautiful, Robert. She had your eyes and your stubborn chin. She fought so hard to stay with us, but God had other plans. I held her for 3 days, and I told her stories about her daddy. I told her about the man who loved her mama so much he was willing to give up everything for her. I buried her with the name Mitchell because she was yours, Robert. She was ours. And in my heart, I was Mrs. Mitchell too. I wore your ring every day, and I dreamed of the life we would have had. I know it's too late for us now. I know I'm probably gone by the time you read this. But I need you to know that you gave me the most beautiful love story, even if it was too short. You gave me purpose and hope and the knowledge that true love exists. Please don't spend your remaining years being angry with me. Please don't waste the precious time you have left mourning what we lost. Instead, remember what we had. Remember that for a few perfect months, we loved each other completely. Remember that somewhere in this world, there was a woman who loved you with her whole heart until her very last breath. I hope you find peace, my darling. I hope you find joy. And if there's a heaven, I hope you'll look for me there. I'll be waiting. Forever yours, Margaret. P.S. I've left you something in my hope chest. It's not much, but it's all I have to give. Please know that every item was chosen with love. Robert's tears fell onto the letter, smudging the ink slightly. He read it twice, then folded it carefully and held it to his chest. She forgave me, he whispered. She forgave me for not finding her sooner. There was nothing to forgive, Iris said firmly. You both did what you thought was right. You both protected each other the only way you knew how. Catherine smiled through her tears. She'd be so happy to know you finally know the truth. She'd be so happy to know you're not angry with her. Robert stood up, his decision made. I need to go back to the house. I need to see what she left for me. And then, Iris asked, and then I need to visit Rose. I need to tell my daughter about her mother. I need to tell her how much we loved her, even though we never got to hold her together. As they prepared to leave, Catherine called out to them. Robert, there's one more thing. Margaret wanted me to tell you that she watched you from her window sometimes. She said you were still the most handsome man she'd ever seen, even with silver hair. Robert smiled through his tears. She always knew how to make me feel like a king. She loved you like one, Catherine said. Never doubt that. The drive back to Eleanor's house was quiet, but it was a different kind of silence than before. Robert sat with Margaret's letter pressed against his chest, and Iris could see decades of pain beginning to lift from his shoulders. He wasn't healed, that would take time, but he was no longer carrying the weight of thinking he'd been rejected. Are you okay? Iris asked as they pulled into the driveway. I don't know, Robert said honestly. I feel like I'm meeting her for the first time and saying goodbye for the last time, all at once. They walked through the front door together, and Robert paused in the living room. Everything looked different now that he knew the truth. The simple furniture, the carefully tended plants, the books lined up on the shelves, it all told the story of a woman who had been waiting. She was waiting for you, Iris said softly, reading his thoughts. All of this, the house, the garden, the way she lived, she was keeping herself ready in case you came back. They climbed the stairs to Eleanor's bedroom. Iris had been in here before to pack clothes for the donation center, but she hadn't thought to look in the closet. Now she pulled open the doors and immediately saw it. The hope chest was cedar, old but well-maintained. It sat on the closet floor, tucked behind Eleanor's dresses. Robert knelt beside it, his hands trembling as he touched the brass latch. "She really did this," he murmured. "She really spent 60 years collecting things for us." "Open it," Iris encouraged gently. Robert lifted the lid, and the scent of cedar and lavender filled the room. Inside, the chest was organized with the same careful attention Eleanor had brought to everything else in her life. On top was a photo album, bound in leather. Robert opened it to the first page and gasped. It was a picture of him from 1952, young and laughing, his arm around Margaret in the town square. He didn't remember anyone taking the photo, but there was proof of their happiness. "Look at you too," Iris whispered. "You can see the love in your eyes." Robert turned the pages slowly. Margaret had filled the album with photos of their time together, but also with pictures she'd clipped from magazines over the years. Images of couples growing old together, families around dinner tables, children playing in yards. She'd built a visual story of the life she'd imagined for them. Beneath the album were clothes. Shirts in colors she thought he'd like, sweaters for winter evenings, a tie for special occasions. Everything was still in tissue paper, carefully preserved. "She knew your size," Iris observed, holding up a shirt. "She remembered everything about you." "Margaret always paid attention to details," Robert said, his voice thick with emotion. "She used to say the little things were what made love real." At the bottom of the chest, they found a small wooden box. Inside were mementos from their brief time together, ticket stubs from movies they'd seen, a pressed flower from their first date, a program from a church social where they danced until midnight. And beneath those, another letter. This one was shorter, written in a different hand, shakier, more recent. "Robert, I wrote this last week. I can feel my time getting shorter, and I wanted to leave you something more than memories. In the garden, under the rose bush by the back fence, I've buried a time capsule. I started it in 1953, and I've been adding to it every year since. It contains all the things I wanted to share with you, letters I wrote but never sent, photos of how I've changed, stories of what I did with my days. It's not much of a life compared to what we could have had together, but it was a life lived in love with you. Please know that even in my loneliness, I was never truly alone. You were always with me." Robert stood up immediately. "The garden. We have to check the garden." They went downstairs and out the back door. Eleanor's garden was beautiful, filled with roses and perennials that were just beginning to bloom in the spring warmth. The rose bush by the back fence was the largest, clearly the oldest and most carefully tended. Robert knelt beside it and began digging with his hands. About 2 feet down, his fingers hit something hard. Together, he and Iris unearthed a metal box wrapped in plastic to keep it dry. Inside the box was 60 years of love letters. Letters Margaret had written to Robert but never sent. One for every year they'd been apart. Robert opened the first one, dated September 15, 1953. Exactly 1 year after their planned elopement. "My darling Robert, today marks 1 year since we were supposed to start our life together. I wonder where you are, what you're doing, if you're happy. I gave birth to our daughter this year. She was perfect, Robert. She was us. I named her Rose because you always brought me roses, and I wanted her to carry a piece of you with her always. She's buried in Magnolia Springs Cemetery, and I visit her every week. I tell her about her daddy, about how much you would have loved her. I hope someday you'll visit her too. I hope someday you'll forgive me for not being brave enough to fight harder for us." Robert's hands shook as he reached for the next letter, dated 1954. "My darling Robert, I saw you today. You were at the bank in town, and you looked so handsome in your suit. I hid behind a pillar and watched you conduct your business. You seemed sad, Robert. I wanted so badly to run to you, to explain everything, but I couldn't. What would I say? How do you explain a year of silence? How do you come back from the dead? I've made my choice and now I have to live with it. But seeing you reminded me that some loves never die. You're in my heart, Robert. You always will be. Have you ever felt something like this? A love so strong it survived decades of separation? Iris wiped tears from her eyes as Robert continued reading. Each letter was a window into a heart that never stopped loving, never stopped hoping. Margaret had chronicled her entire life in these letters, the jobs she took, the places she lived, the way she kept Robert's memory alive through every ordinary day. The letter from 1967 made them both cry. My darling Robert, I saw in the newspaper that you've moved back to Cedar Falls. Part of me wants to believe it's because you're looking for me. Part of me hopes you've given up and found someone else to love. I don't know which would hurt more, knowing you're close but still lost to me, or knowing you're happy without me. I drive by your house sometimes. It's silly, I know, but I like to see your lights on in the evening. I like to imagine you're content. I've started volunteering at the children's hospital. Holding sick babies reminds me of holding Rose. It hurts and heals at the same time. I think that's what love is, Robert. It hurts and heals at the same time. As the years progressed, the letters showed Margaret's growing acceptance of her choice, but also her enduring love. The letter from 1985 was particularly poignant. My darling Robert, I turned 50 today. I spent the day in Rose's garden, planting new flowers and thinking about what our lives might have looked like. Would we have had more children? Would you have gone gray gracefully like your father? Would we have been the kind of couple who still held hands after 30 years of marriage? I think we would have been. I think our love was the kind that grows stronger with time, not weaker. I may have lived these 30 years alone, but I haven't lived them unloved. Your love has sustained me, Robert. Even though you didn't know you were giving it to me, it sustained me. The most recent letters showed Margaret's growing awareness of her own mortality, but also a deep peace. The letter from 2023, just a year before her death, was particularly beautiful. My dearest Robert, I am old now and tired. My body is failing, but my heart is still young when I think of you. I dream about you often. In my dreams, we're young again, and we're dancing in the town square like we used to. In my dreams, we had our chance. I wake up smiling from those dreams, Robert. Even now, you make me smile. I don't know if you're still alive. I don't know if you ever think of me, but I want you to know that loving you has been the greatest privilege of my life. You taught me what it means to love someone completely. You showed me that true love doesn't end just because circumstances change. If there's a next life, I'll find you. If there's a heaven, I'll wait for you. And if there's nothing after this, then I'm grateful I got to love you in this life. Forever yours. Robert set down the last letter and looked up at the sky. The sun was setting, painting the garden in shades of gold and rose. She never stopped, he said quietly. 60 years, and she never stopped writing to me. She never stopped loving you, Iris corrected. The letters were just her way of staying connected. Robert stood up and walked to the rose bush. He touched the blooms gently, reverently. These are for you, aren't they? He asked the flowers. Every year, she planted roses for you. I think she planted them for both of you, Iris said. For you and for the love that never died. Robert pulled out his phone and showed Iris a photo. This is what I've been carrying for 60 years. It was a picture of Margaret, young and radiant, laughing at something off camera. Her eyes sparkled with joy and mischief. I took this the day before we were supposed to elope, Robert said. She was trying on the dress she'd bought for our wedding. She was so excited, so happy. I wanted to remember her just like that. She was beautiful. She was everything. Robert put the phone away. I need to visit Rose tomorrow. I need to tell her I finally found her mother's letters. I need to tell her I finally understand. What do you understand? That love isn't about timing. It's not about getting everything right. It's about choosing to keep loving, even when it's hard. Even when it's impossible. Margaret chose to love me for 60 years, even though she thought I'd forgotten her. That's not a tragedy, Iris. That's a miracle. They gathered the letters carefully, placing them back in the time capsule along with the photos and mementos. As they prepared to go back inside, Robert paused. Iris, I need to ask you something. What are you planning to do with Eleanor's house? I haven't decided yet. I was thinking of selling it, but after today. Don't sell it, Robert said firmly. This house is a monument to love. It's proof that true love exists, that it endures, that it survives even when we think it's lost. What do you want me to do with it? Keep it. Live in it. Fill it with the love Eleanor never got to share. She'd want that, I think. She'd want this house to see happiness again. Iris looked around the garden, imagining what it would be like to wake up here every morning, to tend Eleanor's roses, to honor the love story that had played out in these rooms. I'll think about it, she said softly. There's something else, Robert said. Tomorrow, after we visit Rose, I want to take you somewhere. Where? To the cottage by the lake. The one I mentioned in my letters. I bought it in 1953, thinking maybe someday Margaret would come back and we could still have our dream. I've kept it all these years. I'd like you to see it. You kept the cottage? I kept everything, Iris. Just like she did. We were both waiting for a second chance that never came. As they walked back toward the house, Iris felt the weight of the day settling over her. She'd started the morning thinking she was cleaning out a simple old house. Now she understood she was the keeper of one of the most beautiful love stories she'd ever heard. Robert, she said as they reached the back door. Yes, thank you for loving her so completely. Thank you for never giving up, even when you thought she had. Robert smiled, and for the first time in 60 years, it reached his eyes. Thank you for finding me, he said. Thank you for bringing us back together, even if it's too late. Maybe it's not too late, Iris said quietly. Maybe this is exactly when it was supposed to happen. The drive to Magnolia Springs felt like the longest hour of Robert's life. He sat in the passenger seat of Iris's car, still clutching the wedding ring, while she navigated the winding country roads. Neither of them spoke much. The weight of 60 years of questions hung between them like fog. Magnolia Springs Cemetery was a sprawling brick building surrounded by oak trees. As they walked through the wrought iron gates, the smell of magnolia blossoms and fresh earth hit them immediately. A groundskeeper pointed them toward Section C when they asked about the Mitchell grave. They found Rose's headstone nestled beneath a massive oak tree, its branches heavy with Spanish moss. It was small but beautiful, made of white marble with delicate roses carved around the edges. The inscription was simple. Rose Mitchell, beloved daughter. 3 days of perfect love. Robert knelt beside the grave and placed his hand on the headstone. His shoulders shook as 60 years of grief finally found its voice. Hello, baby girl, he whispered. I'm your daddy. I'm so sorry it took me so long to find you. Iris felt tears streaming down her face as she watched this elderly man finally meet his daughter. She gave him space, walking a few steps away to let him have this moment alone. Your mama loved you so much, Robert continued. She visited you every week for 60 years. She planted roses in her garden for you. She told me about you in her letters. She said you had my eyes and my stubborn chin. He pulled Margaret's final letter from his pocket and read parts of it aloud to Rose, telling her about her mother's life, about the love that never died, about the hope chest and the garden and the decades of waiting. I wish I could have held you, he said finally. I wish I could have been there when you were born, when you were fighting to stay with us. But I want you to know that you were wanted, Rose. You were so wanted. We would have been a family. We would have loved you every day of your life. Iris rejoined him, kneeling on the other side of the grave. She's beautiful, she said softly, though she knew it might sound strange. She is, Robert agreed. I can feel her here. I can feel them both here. They sat in silence for a while, letting the peace of the cemetery wash over them. Finally, Robert stood up. There's something I need to do. Something I should have done 60 years ago. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the ring, the one Margaret had bought for him, the one Iris had found in the attic. Margaret wanted me to have this on our wedding day, he said. She wanted me to have something to remember my promises by. To Iris's surprise, Robert slipped the ring onto his own finger. "I, Robert Mitchell," he said formally, his voice carrying across the quiet cemetery, "take you, Margaret Eleanor, to be my wife. In sickness and in health, in joy and in sorrow, in life and in death. I promise to love you, honor you, and cherish you for as long as my heart beats." He paused, looking down at Rose's grave. "And I promise to love our daughter, and to visit her, and to tell her stories about her beautiful mother who loved us both so much." Iris felt goosebumps rise on her arms. She was witnessing something sacred, a wedding ceremony 60 years in the making. Robert looked up at the sky. "You can kiss the bride now if you want," he said with a watery smile. "I'll wait." A gentle breeze stirred the oak leaves above them, and for just a moment, Iris could have sworn she felt the presence of others, a young woman in a wedding dress, a baby girl with dark eyes, the whisper of love that transcends time and space. "They're here," she whispered. "I know," Robert said peacefully. "I can feel them." After another hour at the cemetery, they drove to the cottage by the lake. Iris wasn't prepared for what she saw when they pulled up the long gravel driveway. The cottage was perfect. Small but beautiful, with a wraparound porch and flower boxes under every window. It sat on a gentle hill overlooking a pristine lake, surrounded by towering pine trees. It looked like something from a fairy tale. "Robert, this is gorgeous." Margaret always said she wanted to live somewhere she could see the sunrise over water, he said as they walked toward the front door. "I bought this place thinking about that. Thinking about her." Inside, the cottage was like a time capsule. The furniture was from the 1950s, carefully maintained, but clearly untouched by modern trends. Everything was clean and ready, as if Robert had been expecting guests. "You've been taking care of it all this time?" "I come up here sometimes. Weekends, holidays. I sit on the porch and imagine what it would have been like if she'd come with me." The living room had a stone fireplace and built-in bookshelves. The kitchen was small but charming, with a farmhouse table for two. But it was the bedroom that took Iris's breath away. The bed was made with a quilt in shades of rose and cream. On the nightstand was a framed photo of Margaret, the same one Robert carried in his wallet. On the dresser was a collection of things clearly meant for her, a silver brush and mirror set, a bottle of the perfume she used to wear, a silk scarf in her favorite color. "You furnished this for her," Iris said wonderingly. "Every piece. I imagined what she'd like, what would make her happy. I wanted her to feel at home here if she ever came." On the back porch, there were 2 rocking chairs facing the lake. They sat and watched the water lap gently at the shore. "What will you do now?" Iris asked. "Now that you know the truth?" Robert was quiet for a long time. "I'm 78 years old," he said finally. "I don't have many years left. But for the first time in 60 years, I'm not angry. I'm not bitter. I understand what happened, and I forgive everyone involved. Even Margaret's father. He thought he was protecting his daughter." "That's very generous of you." "Anger is exhausting, Iris. I spent too many years carrying it. Now I just want to honor what Margaret and I had. I want to make the rest of my time count." "What does that look like?" Robert smiled. "I want to live in this cottage. I want to wake up every morning and watch the sunrise Margaret never got to see. I want to visit Rose every week and tell her about her mother. And I want to get to know you better." "Me? You're the closest thing I'll ever have to family, Iris. You're Margaret's granddaughter. You have her eyes, you know. Her kindness. Her strength." Iris felt a warm glow in her chest. "I'd like that too. There's something else. I want to do something to honor their memory. Margaret's and Rose's." "What did you have in mind?" "The cottage. I want to turn it into a retreat for young couples. Couples who are struggling, who need time away to remember why they fell in love. I want them to have what Margaret and I never got, the chance to build a life together." Can you imagine a place like that? A sanctuary where love gets a second chance? That's beautiful, Robert. I'll need help, though. Someone young, someone who believes in love, someone who understands what this place represents. Iris looked out over the lake, thinking about her own life. She was 28, single, working a job that didn't fulfill her. She'd been drifting, waiting for something to give her life meaning. Maybe this was it. "I'll help you," she said. "I'll help you turn this into something beautiful." Robert reached over and squeezed her hand. "Margaret would be so proud of you." "I hope so." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun begin to set over the lake. The water turned to gold, then rose, then deep purple as evening approached. "Robert?" Iris said as they prepared to leave. "Yes." "Do you think they're at peace now?" Margaret and Rose. Robert looked back at the cottage, then up at the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. "I think they've been at peace for a long time," he said. "They were waiting for me to find peace too." "And have you found peace?" Robert smiled, and Iris saw the young man he'd been 60 years ago, full of hope and love and possibility. "I'm getting there," he said. "For the first time in 60 years, I'm getting there." 6 months later, Iris stood on the porch of what was now called Margaret's cottage, watching the sunrise paint the lake in shades of gold and rose. The transformation had been remarkable. What had been Robert's private shrine to lost love was now a haven for couples from all over the region. They came for weekend retreats, marriage intensives, and renewal ceremonies. Young couples on the brink of divorce, elderly couples celebrating 50 years together, couples struggling with loss, couples learning to love again after betrayal. All of them found something magical in this place where two people had loved so deeply that their love had survived 60 years of separation. Robert had moved into the cottage permanently, and Iris had taken the apartment above the old boathouse. She managed the bookings, coordinated with counselors and therapists, and maintained the grounds. But more than that, she'd become the keeper of Margaret and Robert's story. Every couple who came to the cottage heard their story. They learned about love that endures, about second chances, about the courage it takes to keep believing in happily ever after even when it seems impossible. The program had been featured in several magazines. They'd had more booking requests than they could handle. But Iris was careful to keep the magic intact. They only accepted couples who truly needed what this place offered: hope. Robert had thrived in his new role as host and unofficial marriage counselor. His gentle wisdom and obvious belief in love made him a natural guide for struggling couples. He'd officiated 3 renewal ceremonies and performed 2 marriages for couples who'd met at the cottage. But it was the memorial garden that meant the most to him. They'd created it together, Iris and Robert, in the space between the cottage and the lake. It was dedicated to Margaret and Rose, and to all the loves that had been lost, but not forgotten. Couples could plant flowers there, leave stones with messages, or simply sit and remember. At the center of the garden was a small memorial plaque, in memory of Margaret Eleanor Mitchell and Rose Mitchell, and in honor of love that transcends time, space, and circumstance. Some loves are written in the stars, but the greatest loves are written in the heart. Today was special. It was September 15th, exactly 61 years since Margaret and Robert were supposed to meet at the train station. They'd planned a commemoration, a celebration of their love story and the healing it had brought to so many others. Iris checked her watch. The couples would start arriving soon for the weekend retreat, but first, she wanted to visit the memorial garden with Robert. She found him there already, kneeling beside the rose bush they'd planted in Margaret's honor. He was wearing his wedding ring, the one Margaret had bought him, and speaking quietly to the flowers. "Good morning," Iris said softly, not wanting to interrupt. "Good morning, dear. I was just telling Margaret about today's couples. We have a young pair from Chicago who've been married 2 years, but feel like strangers. An older couple who lost a child and can't find their way back to each other. And a widow who's ready to love again but doesn't know how. She would have loved helping them. She is helping them. Every couple who finds healing here is a testament to what she and I shared. Every marriage that gets saved, Every love that gets renewed, it's all part of her legacy. They walked to the lake shore, where Robert had built a small dock. 2 chairs sat at the end, facing the water. Any regrets? Iris asked as they settled into the chairs. Robert considered the question seriously. I regret that we lost so much time. I regret that we never got to raise Rose together, never got to grow old side by side. But I don't regret loving her. I don't regret the wait. Some loves are worth waiting a lifetime for, even when the lifetime ends before you get your chance. Especially then. The waiting is proof of the depth of the love. Anyone can love when it's easy, Iris. But to love through 60 years of separation, to love through loss and disappointment and unanswered questions, that's the kind of love that changes the world. A car pulled up the driveway, followed by another. Their weekend guests were arriving. Ready? Iris asked. Ready. They greeted each couple personally, sharing the story of Margaret and Robert, explaining the purpose of the cottage, setting the stage for transformation. Iris watched as skeptical faces softened, as defensive postures relaxed, as hope began to bloom in tired eyes. That evening, they gathered all 3 couples on the porch for dinner. Robert told stories about love, not just his and Margaret's, but all the love stories he'd witnessed over the years. He talked about the couple who'd been married 40 years and still left love notes in each other's lunch boxes. The teenage sweethearts who'd found each other again after 30 years apart. The man who'd learned to love his wife all over again after she lost her memory to Alzheimer's. Love isn't a feeling, Robert said as the sun set over the lake. Feelings come and go. Love is a choice. It's a commitment. It's deciding every day to see the best in someone, to forgive their worst, to build something beautiful together even when the world tries to tear it down. The young couple from Chicago looked at each other with new eyes. The older couple reached for each other's hands. The widow smiled for the first time since arriving. Later that night, after the couples had retired to their rooms, Iris and Robert sat on the dock under the stars. You did good today, Iris said. We did good, Robert corrected. This is a team effort. They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the gentle lapping of the water against the dock. Iris, I need to tell you something. Something in his tone made her turn to look at him more closely. What is it? I'm sick. The doctors found it 3 months ago. Cancer. I have maybe 6 months, maybe less. Iris felt her heart drop. Robert, no. Why didn't you tell me? Because I wanted to focus on living, not dying. Because I wanted to see this place become what it was meant to be. Because I wanted to make sure you'd be okay to carry on without me. I can't do this without you. Yes, you can. You've been carrying the heart of this place from the beginning. I'm just the storyteller. But you're the one who makes the magic happen. Robert reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded paper. I've updated my will. The cottage is yours, Iris. All of it. Margaret would want it that way. She'd want someone who believes in love to keep this going. Iris's eyes filled with tears. I don't know what to say. Say you'll remember our story. Say you'll keep telling it to couples who need to hear it. Say you'll help them believe in love even when it seems impossible. I promise. Robert smiled. Then I can go in peace. Not yet, Iris said firmly. You're not going anywhere yet. We have work to do. Over the next few months, they worked together to create a foundation, to establish partnerships with marriage counselors and therapists, to ensure that Margaret's cottage would continue long after Robert was gone. They documented everything, the story, the mission, the vision for the future. Robert declined gradually but peacefully. He spent his days in the memorial garden, talking to Margaret and Rose, watching the couples who came to heal. He officiated one last wedding, a couple who'd met at the cottage during a marriage retreat and fallen in love again after 20 years of growing apart. On a cold December morning, exactly 3 months after Margaret's death anniversary, Robert passed away in his sleep. Iris found him in his favorite chair, facing the lake, a peaceful smile on his face. In his lap was Margaret's final letter, and on his finger was the wedding ring she'd bought him 60 years earlier. The memorial service was held at the cottage, with more than 100 people in attendance. Couples they'd helped, marriage counselors they'd worked with, members of the community who'd been touched by their story. Everyone shared memories of Robert's kindness, his wisdom, his unwavering belief in love. Catherine came from the nursing home, brought by her caretakers. She was frail but alert, and she spoke about Margaret and Robert with tears in her eyes. "They're together now," she said simply. "After all these years, they're finally together." Iris buried Robert next to Rose in Magnolia Springs Cemetery. The headstone was simple. Robert Mitchell, beloved husband and father. He loved completely, waited patiently, and forgave freely. But she didn't mourn for long. There was too much work to do, too many couples who needed what Margaret's cottage offered. Spring came early that year, and with it came a renewed sense of purpose. Iris hired additional staff, expanded the programs, and began writing a book about Margaret and Robert's story. One evening in May, as she sat on the dock watching the sunset, she heard footsteps behind her. She turned to see a young man approaching hesitantly. "Excuse me," he said. "I'm sorry to bother you, but I heard about this place. About the story. I'm getting married next month, and He paused, looking embarrassed. "I don't know if I believe in love anymore. I've seen too many marriages fail. I'm scared I'm making a mistake." Iris smiled and gestured to the chair beside her. "Sit down. Let me tell you a story about two people who loved each other so much that 60 years of separation couldn't break their bond." As she began to speak, she felt Robert's presence, felt Margaret's approval, felt the continuation of something beautiful and eternal. The young man listened with growing wonder as Iris told him about the wedding ring in the attic, about the letters that revealed a lifetime of love, about the cottage by the lake where love gets second chances. "So they never got to be together?" he asked when she finished. "They were always together," Iris said softly. "Love doesn't require proximity. It doesn't need perfect timing. True love transcends everything: time, space, death, misunderstanding. Margaret and Robert taught me that. They loved each other completely for 60 years, even when they thought that love wasn't returned. That's not a tragedy. That's the most beautiful love story ever told." The young man was quiet for a long time, staring out over the water. "I think I understand," he said finally. "Love isn't about guarantees, is it? It's about faith. Now you're getting it." As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Iris knew that Margaret and Robert's story would continue to heal hearts, to restore faith, to remind people that love, real, deep, transformative love, was always worth the risk. She pulled out her phone and called her fiancé. Yes, she'd found love too, with a counselor who'd come to help at the cottage, and stayed to help with her heart. "How did it go today?" he asked. "Another couple saved, another heart healed. This place really works, you know." "I know. That's because it was built on a foundation of true love. That kind of love creates miracles." As Iris walked back to the cottage, she passed the memorial garden. In the moonlight, she could see the roses Robert had planted for Margaret, the flowers that bloomed year after year as a testament to love that never dies. "Thank you," she whispered to the night air. "Thank you for showing me what love looks like." A gentle breeze stirred the roses, and for just a moment, Iris could have sworn she heard laughter, young and joyful and full of hope. The sound of two people who had finally found their way home to each other. Love, she realized, wasn't about the destination. It was about the journey. And some journeys, the most beautiful ones, last exactly as long as they're meant to, whether that's 60 days or 60 years or 60 lifetimes. At Margaret's cottage, love always found a way. And in the end, that's all that really mattered. Tell me your story in the comments if this resonates with you. 1 year later, Iris published the book, The Wedding Ring in the Attic, a love story that transcended time. It became a bestseller, bringing even more couples to Margaret's cottage. But more importantly, it brought hope to millions of people who had given up on love. Iris kept her promise to Robert. She told their story to every couple who came to the cottage. She reminded them that love isn't measured by how long you get to keep it, but by how deeply you choose to feel it. The cottage became a pilgrimage site for lovers. People came from around the world to see the place where two hearts had finally found peace. They planted roses in the memorial garden. They left letters in the time capsule. They renewed their vows on the dock where Robert had spoken his wedding vows to the wind. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the lake was perfectly still, visitors would swear they could see two figures walking hand in hand along the shoreline. A young man and woman, finally together, finally home. Margaret's cottage proved that some love stories don't end with happily ever after. The greatest love stories end with love ever after, love that continues beyond death, beyond time, beyond the limitations of this world. Robert had been right. Love isn't about timing. It's about choosing to keep loving, even when it seems impossible. Even when you're separated by decades of misunderstanding. Even when you think the other person has forgotten you. Even when you're down to your last breath. Because true love, the kind that Margaret and Robert shared, doesn't die. It just transforms. It becomes the foundation for something bigger than two hearts beating in sync. It becomes hope for everyone who dares to believe that love is real. It becomes proof that some things in this world are worth waiting for. It becomes a cottage by a lake where broken hearts go to heal. It becomes a story that reminds us all why we keep trying, why we keep hoping, why we keep believing in love even when love breaks our hearts. Margaret and Robert never got their fairy tale ending. But they got something better. They got a love that outlasted death itself. They got a story that would inspire thousands of other love stories. They got forever. And in the end, what more could two hearts ask for? Some loves are written in the stars, but the greatest loves are written in the heart. And what's written in the heart never fades, never dies, never ends. It just waits patiently for its moment to bloom again.